Hello, back again. I'm just going to show you how I've got my Logitech Media Server set up these days, because I've changed things about a bit. Because before I had my hard drive plugged into my Raspberry Pi running PiCod player, which also ran as the Logitech Media Server. But as I've got a couple of extra players now, I wanted the server more central. So the thing I've done, I've got another Raspberry Pi, which I'm running Pi OS or Pi OS Lite on, which is running the Logitech Media Server, which is plugged into my router, so the server's more central. So I get a better connection between the players instead of it just running off the one Raspberry Pi. And I'm going to show you how I've got it all set up. I'm going to show you, say, how to install the Logitech Media Server on a Raspberry Pi running Pi OS. The thing I'm going to do also is show you two methods of mounting the hard drive. Because the way I've got mine set up is I've got a Raspberry Pi 3, which is running a Logitech Media Server, which is being powered via my router, via the USB sockets on my router. And then I've got Ethernet cable from the Raspberry Pi to the router for data. But the thing also is my USB hard drive is plugged into the router, and the router is running a Samba share. And the thing I do, I've got that mapped into the Raspberry Pi. It's called drive mapping. It's not hard to do, and I'll show you in the video how it's done. But I'll also show you a normal way where the USB hard drive is plugged into the Raspberry Pi. And then you just add the drive, or say mount the drive via its UUID. Right, the first thing we're going to do is go to the Raspberry Pi website. You can download the Pi OS image via the imaging software, but I like to download it and keep it on my PC. So I'm going to go to software and then scroll down. A little bit further. And you want the section where it says manually install an operating system and see all download options. You can use the 32-bit version if you want to, but the 64-bit version will run on a Raspberry Pi 3 fine. And we want the Raspberry Pi OS Lite version. We don't need the version with the desktop, we want the Lite version. So I'm just going to click download and save to my downloads. Doesn't take too long to download. I'll just fast forward the download. Nearly done. And that's finished downloading. So I'll just close my browser window. We're going to be using a bit of software called Raspberry Pi Imager to burn the image to an SD card. So I'm going to choose OS. So you've got the option to download it via the imaging software. But as I've downloaded it, I'm going to go to Use Custom. And there's my file, which I just downloaded, or my image file. I'm going to choose storage, which is my SD card. Then I'm going to click on the cog, because we've got to turn on SSH. And plus I'm going to set the host name. You can call it anything you want, it's entirely up to you. But I'm going to use LMS for Logitech Media Server. And then I'm going to tick the box to enable SSH. I'll just scroll down a little bit. You can change the username to anything you want. I'm just going to call it Pi like normal. And then add your password. Don't forget the password, because you'll be using it in a minute. and then I'm going to click save, and then click the write button, and then yes. Doesn't take too long to write the image to an SD card, but I will fast forward through this little bit. And now it's verifying. Nearly done, and it's finalizing. And that's done. So we click continue, and then we can close that down. Cancel that. Now you can plug the SD card into your Raspberry Pi for the first time. Right, now we're going to be using a bit of software called Putty to log into the Raspberry Pi via SSH. The host name is the IP address of your Raspberry Pi. So mine is 192.196.1.238. And the thing you can do, you can save it, save the session or save the host name. So I'm going to call mine LMS for Logitech Media Server. I'm going to call it LMS test. Just going to click save. I'm just going to change the text size so you can make it easier for you to read. Going to log in Pi and then use your password. And now we're logged in. I'm just going to make the window bigger. Just move it out of the way a bit. Let's open a text document. Right, first thing you always want to do is update your Pi OS. So right click to paste, then click enter. It's just checking now to see if there are any updates. Nearly done. And there's 13 updates. So now we're going to update Pi OS or upgrade. So right click to paste and then enter. Click Y for yes and then enter, and it'll start updating. I'll just fast forward through this part. I do recommend giving it a reboot. So just type sudo reboot. Give it a few seconds to reboot. Right, just right click on the top and I can restart session. You just right click on the top bar. So I'm going to log in again as Pi and then my password again. And that's done. Right, the first method is how I've got mine set up, which is drive mapping. Right, this line of text, the first line, you want to change this to the IP address of your router, and this is the share name. I've got a Samba share on my router, which is sharing the USB hard drive I got plugged in to my router. So I'll just show you. I'm going to log into my router. I use OpenWRT on my router to run a Samba share, but even stock firmware allows you to share hard drives. So I'm just going to go into network shares. I'll just scroll down and you should see something similar to this. So the share name, the Samba share name of my USB hard drive is called stuff. So you've got the IP address of your router and then the share name. So IP address and then share name. Change that to how you have yours set up if you're going to use this method. All right. So I'll just close that down. Right, now we need to go into fstab. I think that's how it's pronounced. I'm just going to copy the text, right click to paste, and then enter. Just use your arrow keys on your keyboard to move down. Now I'm just going to click enter to move one more space down. Then copy this, copy the full line of text, IP address of your router, and your Samba share name. So I'm going to copy, right click to paste it in. Just double check everything's right. So IP address and stuff, and home Pi music is where this drive is going to be mounted within the Pi OS on the Raspberry Pi. So Control X, then click Y to save. And that's now saved. Right, so that's the first method. The thing I'll do, I'll show you another method now, method 2. How to mount a drive. In method 2, the hard drive is plugged into the Raspberry Pi, which I would say is more of a normal setup. The first method is if you're going to map a drive. So I'm just going to clear the Putty screen to make it a bit clearer. That's all I've done. Right, method 2. Right, first thing we're going to do, we're going to install Samba. You don't need to do this in method 1 because you're using a Samba server which is running on your router. But if you do method 2, you need to install a Samba server because you're sharing from the Raspberry Pi directly. So click Y for yes to install the Samba server. This may sound a bit complicated, but it's not too bad. Right, so that's installing. It doesn't take too long to do. Nearly done. Nearly finished, promise. Right, that's the Samba server installed. Thing we need to do now is find the UUID of the hard drive. This is like a unique number for every hard drive. So copy this line of text, right click to paste, and then enter. What you're looking for is DEV/SDA1. This is nearly always the USB hard drive you've plugged in. Look for SDA1 and then you will see UUID equals, and then a set of numbers and letters, and you want to copy them. So look for SDA1, then UUID, and copy the letters and numbers. I'm just going to paste it into my text document. Now we're going to go back into fstab again, if that's the right way to pronounce it. So I'm going to copy, right click to paste, and then enter. Use your arrow keys on your keyboard to move down. And then this line of text, we're going to copy it all. Let me just resize it. You want to make sure you copy everything. Copy, right click to paste, and paste it. It is all there. Just use your left arrow key on your keyboard and it's all there, just to make sure it's all there. So you've got the UUID number of your hard drive and the mount point. So all you need to do now is Control X on your keyboard, then Y for yes, and then enter. And that's the drive's now mounted. Now the thing we're going to do now is set up the Samba share, so you can read and write to the hard drive if you want to add music or do any edits. So I'm going to copy, right click to paste, and then enter. Now use the down arrow on your keyboard and scroll all the way down to the bottom. I don't know if there's a shortcut to get to the bottom. If someone does know, please put in the comments. Right, now this is the setup for the Samba share. Keep it as it is. Right, so path is MNT music. It must match the UUID code. So the path and the UUID code must match. So music and music, them two must match. Otherwise your Samba share won't work. So I'm going to copy it all, right click to copy. So right click to paste again. So that's all done. So do Control X, Y for yes, and then enter. So that's saved. Thing I'm going to do, I'm going to reboot, do a sudo reboot. You want to do this after method 1 and method 2 to make sure the drive's mounted. Right, just right click on the top and I can restart session. You just right click on the top bar. So I'm going to log in again as Pi and then my password again. And that's done. The thing I do now, I just check the Samba server's working. So I'm going to go // and then the IP address of my Raspberry Pi, which is 192.168.1.238. Look in your router to find IP addresses. So that's the Samba share, music. Then I got a folder called FLAC. And these are all my music folders. So I know the Samba share is working. So I can read and write to it. I'm just going to close that down. Right, that's all done. Now we're going to install the Logitech Media Server. Just make it larger. We need some additional packages before we can install the Logitech Media Server. So I'm going to copy this line of text. Just make it smaller. Right click to paste and then enter. And that's finished. And now we're going to download the Logitech Media Server. Just copy this line of text. I'm going to copy. The latest release at the moment is 8.3.1. Right click to paste it and then enter. Doesn't take too long to download. Nearly finished. And that's finished. So that's done. And now we're going to install the Logitech Media Server. So copy the line of text and copy. Just make you smaller. Right click to paste and then enter. And this will now install the server. And that's finished. You can give the Raspberry Pi a reboot if you want to, but it should work now without doing so. Just going to minimize my text document. Right, going to open a browser. So you want to go to the IP address of your Raspberry Pi and then colon and then 9,000. So the IP address of your Raspberry Pi colon 9,000. And the Logitech Media Server window should pop up. I don't sign in, I never have done. And I untick the box and then I'm just going to click next down the bottom right. Right, if you've done the first method with drive mapping, your music is mounted in Home, Pi, Music, and there you can see my folder with all my music. So it's in Home, Pi, Music. That's if you've done the first method of drive mapping. If we've done the second method, where the USB hard drive is plugged into the Raspberry Pi, you want to go into MNT, and then you will see a music folder, and there's my FLAC folder. I'm just going to double check, and there's all my music. So I'm going to click on FLAC, and you'll see in the bottom left it'll say MNT Music FLAC, just to make sure I've got the right folder. And then you just click next. I don't use a playlist folder, so I'm just going to click next and then finish. And as you can see now, it's rescanning media library, so it's scanning your hard drive. So come back in a good, I don't know, 15-20 minutes, and you should find all your music as now loaded. Right, once it's all finished, I'll just go into my albums just to check. Just play an album, so make sure everything's loaded. And that's all working. Just go back to Home. So that's everything set up and working. So it's up to you if you want to use method 1, where you use drive mapping. So that's if you've got your USB hard drive plugged into your router and then the router is running a Samba share. Or you can use method 2, which is a more normal method, that the USB hard drive with your music is plugged into the Raspberry Pi directly, and then you just mount via its UUID. It's entirely up to you which method you use. Neither method is better than the other. They both work. It's just I normally use method 1. That way I find it a bit faster to get access to the hard drive. It's a bit quicker via the router's Samba share. Because say if you're using something like a Pi 2 does work as a Logitech Media Server, but say if you're using a Pi 2 or a Pi 3, I've always found it a little bit slow accessing the hard drive. So if you want to move files to it, or if you want to do any edit to your music files, like adding covers and whatever, or editing your tags, I've always found it a little bit slow when the hard drive's plugged into the Raspberry Pi. It's fine, it's just a little bit slow. That's why I've got mine plugged into my router directly, and then I access the drive via the Samba share, which is running on my router. So as always, I hope this video wasn't too complicated, and as always, I hope this video helps, and goodbye.